I know this is probably not what you're supposed to do, but the media does a really good job of going in and attacking every aspect from every side of everything. So I listen to the media to determine what is going on with Obamacare. I hear outrageous, billions and billions of dollars removed from this program, billions removed from that program. And then when I look at it, it's not true. I have always been a proponent for affordable health care. I mean, we've got to have affordable health care for everyone. I am sickened by the fact of seeing young people trying to have a family going into debt because they happen to be in the early parts of their careers and they don't have health insurance. I did that. I was a college graduate, second lieutenant in the Air Force, being ready to go into the Air Force when my first son was born. It took me 5 years to pay him off, and that was back in the early 80s. It was cheaper back then. Okay? My second one was born when I was in the military. I had health care. Had him paid off in less than a year. I'm in favor of health care, affordable health care. And now we'll get 3 opinions from the Republicans.
I don't need that. I'll answer yes, yes, and yes, I will. And I'll give you 5 examples. $713 billion was taken from Medicare, from our senior citizens and other people to fund Obamacare. Number 2, there's a tax in there. If you make so much money, it's somewhere between 2 and 3.8%. I'm not quite sure what it is. Starting in 13, that helps fund Obamacare. And if I'd have had my 4 tire stores with 100 employees plus my farm, and I had to have Obamacare foisted on me in health care, I would have gone broke or I would have quit the business. I would have had to. Just today, the Congressional Budget Office said 6 million more people with under $200,000 income are going to pay $1,200 more per year in taxes. And Obama said, we are not going to raise taxes on the middle class. Yes, yes, and yes, I will fight it.
I've written several points down with respect to Obamacare. Thanks, Senator Brendan, for the 6 million people to be taxed. I could strike that one off my list. You did a good job on that one. Obamacare seems to ignore one of the basic laws of economics. We're complaining about the high cost of health care. Well, let's think about the simple law of supply and demand that you learned in your high school econ class. If you hold supply steady and increase demand, guess what happens to price? It goes up. I watched a program on PBS. PBS, hardly the bastion and the hideout and the lair of the Tea Party. They had a program on Frontline and talked about the derivation of the health care bill, and it looked like there were several versions, and that didn't go through. So they tried another run at it, and that didn't go through. They tried a 3rd and a 4th and a 5th, and I don't know how many runs at it. Maybe I'm exaggerating on the number of attempts. But in the final analysis, my impression of watching that program on PBS on Frontline was that what they finally got through was what they could get, and it was a gift to the insurance companies. Finally, I would address myself to the notion of the Commerce Clause. The federal Constitution allows the federal government to regulate trade across state lines. It has the authority to regulate that commerce. I do not see in the federal Constitution the authority granted to the federal government to command the production of a product, to compel commerce within a state. I view Obamacare as being unconstitutional, and I will fight it.
Tough to follow those 2 acts, but I guess I can bring a legal perspective to this. The whole thing's baffling to me. When it was being peddled, we heard it's not a tax and it's not a penalty. Well, which is it? Well, that's the Commerce Clause. Well, that got struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. Whether we like it or not, the U.S. Supreme Court has decided that Obamacare is constitutional. I disagree with that. I think Justice Roberts made a mistake. But the one good thing he did is he did say this does not fall under the Commerce Clause. So we've at least cleared that up. The federal government can't regulate everything under the Commerce Clause. That was basically what they were trying to do. But it also raised a real serious question. I mean, the administration basically reversed itself by saying, well, this is a tax. We're not compelling you to buy something, we're just taxing you if you don't. That to me is absolutely frightening. I mean, if they can compel you to purchase health insurance, what's the government going to compel you to do next? I think it's wrong, despite what Justice Roberts says. I think it's unconstitutional. I think the conservatives on the court had it right. I encouraged our state attorney general to join that lawsuit. He decided not to, and now he's running to be your next governor. So please keep that in mind. Committee. And sales tax is something that comes up a lot. I'm tentatively in favor of a sales tax, but only if we can get rid of something else. What really frightens me, and it's something we saw a lot in the tax committee, it came up several times. There were several study bills. Everybody wants to talk about a sales tax. Great idea, except, I mean, we've already got a state income tax, and we've already got state property tax. Now, despite the best reassurances, well, just trust us, we'll implement a sales tax, and then we'll take the property tax off, or we'll get rid of the income tax. You're going to have to put your money where your mouth is first. I'm not in favor of a sales tax unless we can get rid of something else. And that's where I stand on that issue.
My views on the sales tax are very much similar to Austin's. If you could replace another tax with a sales tax, it might be something to consider. The problem with that, if I remember correctly, the Montana Constitution limits any sales tax in the state of Montana to 4%. Well, that wouldn't generate enough money to completely wipe out another tax, so therefore you leave the open door to not only, well, you might momentarily lower another tax, but you never know what the next legislature is going to do. There's another thing that I would like to consider when you talk about taxation. Sometimes we talk about taxation and ignore the other side of the equation. We wouldn't need so much taxation if we weren't doing so much spending. And there's the area where I think a greater concentration ought to be made. So it's kind of a two-sided coin when you talk about the sales tax. No, sales tax won't work in the state of Montana, and let's also look at the matter of spending.
I believe in less taxes and less spending, period. I'll give you an example. In 1993, there was a sales tax brought forth by Republicans in the Senate. I voted against it. Most of my party voted for it. I'll tell you why I voted against it. Because it was an additional tax. It didn't give tax relief to anybody else. But here's food for thought. I'd have to wait and see if the right sales tax, if the right one were to come along, I would generally consider it. But I'll give you a good example on an old tractor I had. I had it 20 years. It was an 8630 John Deere. Bought it at list price $50,000. In the 20 years that I had it, I paid personal property taxes on it in Daniels County for $20,000. Now, if we could eliminate our property taxes, and you had a 10% sales tax on the list price of that tractor, that would only have been $10,000. If you can get price reduction and cut taxes in general across the board, and it can help in that way, and have the right exemption for groceries and drugs, etc., I would consider it, but it would have to be the perfect tax for me to vote for another tax. So generally, I'm not saying there's ever a perfect tax bill, so I guess I probably wouldn't vote for it.
Sales tax at the state level, I would suspect that would happen, same thing as all of our taxes at the state level. Is basically it's tax the entire state and then build up new infrastructure in western Montana. I don't agree with that at all. I'm tired of paying for everything in western Montana. There are other kinds of sales tax though. They can be very focused, they can be very localized. Sydney, for example, has been wanting to have a new rec center. They look at other communities and they say, wow, wouldn't that be nice? They see the price tag. Oh, gosh, how many years will it take for us to have bake sales to raise enough money for that? Okay, wouldn't it be nice to have that now when we really need it? Our elderly need an indoor pool. We need a lot better facilities for this community. Right now, on a Friday night, what do people do? It's not healthy in this community what people do on a Friday night. We need to get something in this community and start acting like bigger communities and start allowing to have services that will enhance our community and keep people living here, something to draw them in. Put a very localized sales tax in place. You make it very specific, you make it small, and you focus it on the item that you want, and that's how you get those items in this community.
Well, first of all, I'd like to see the particulars of any proposal that there is. And any proposal that there is, the governor proposes and the legislature disposes. If we don't like it, we don't like it. And the appropriation starts over there on the House side. It comes over to my committee on Finance and Claims. It's the appropriation side. I'd have to take a look at it and see what it did. Now, if it's like the robbing of the monies from these, quote, school-rich counties last session, I wouldn't be for it. I'm one guy that I broke party lines with them last time when they stole that money. The Republicans that did it were no more right than the Democrats that did it. And because it affected us. And now Scobie, Montana, is a have-not school. And I warned Scobie, I said, you just wait. That oil play is going to come over to Scobie. And right now, Apache Oil, one of the very largest, one or two largest independent oil producers in the world, is over there spending $100 million so far. If they hit oil on that well that they're drilling right now, those two wells that they're drilling, it's going to be awesome. And then Scobie will be like Freud, be like Bainville, it'll be like Westview. And they're going to try to take the money away from us as well. So that's why we're trying to put in a bill when there's impacts for the infrastructure, it goes back to that county. And that's what we're going to be working on.
Be specific on regulation. What rules are most troublesome for you?
All of them. Well, I'll just give you a good example of it. Is it Tony or Toby Romo over at Toby Romo over at Bainville? He was building houses. This was 4 years ago. He said, John, he said, I can get a permit to move my house over to North Dakota like that. It takes me a day or two or three to get the same permit in Montana. 90% of my constituent calls that call me up are rules and regulations that inhibit business from working. And that's number one, why North Dakota has got $4 billion in surplus and we don't. Because look at workers' compensation. Before last session, we cut it 20 to 25%, but we were number 50 in the bottom for high-priced workers' compensation. North Dakota was the cheapest, number one. And we used to make jokes of North Dakota. They're laughing all the way to the bank now. And all we need to do is copy some bills that North Dakota has, rules and regulations, and I could go on and on and on. I could talk about a combine going down the road. DOT guy said you can't do that. No combine can go down the road with a header. Well, you can't get across the road if you got to land on both sides, and you're not going to take the header off even with an easy quick attach. Well, they were getting bad information from Old Point. So I had to go to Shane Mintz in Glendive, who's the head of the highway district of these 16 eastern counties. I mean, that's the kind of rules and regulations, true or false, that are being foisted upon us in Montana. And that's the thing we need to fight against.